Okay, so in this lesson we're going to solve linear equations, and as we go through the solving process, just be aware of all the steps that we're going to perform. So the first thing you want to do when solving a linear equation in these lessons that we're talking about is, if you have any parentheses, you want to use the distributive property to remove the parentheses. Now sometimes when you remove the parentheses, you'll be able to combine like terms. Now that's not always the case, but if you can, then that's what you want to do next. So that'll be your step 2. Once you remove the parentheses and once you combine like terms, then that's where you're going to end up, you're going to begin the process of bringing the variables to one side, constants to the other. Okay, so variables one side, constants to the other. And the process you go through is through the addition property of equality. Now, each time you use the addition property of equality, you're going to notice that we're going to combine like terms. That will be the next thing you're going to do. And you keep doing the process, so you'll be doing this process, use addition property of equality as often as you can, as often if you need to, in order to obtain the variables on one side, constants on the other. And once you get the variables on one side and constants on the other, then that's when you're going to use the multiplication property of equality. So you're going to use this part last. And then once you use the multiplication property of equality, then you're going to simplify to obtain the variable by itself. Okay? All right, so let's look at some examples. So you're going to solve these linear equations. And again, in this course, for the most part, you're dealing with linear equations, or for this lesson. Okay, so number 1, let's suppose we had 4 times 3x minus 5, and that's equal to negative 8. All right. And so notice I do have parentheses, and when I read this as 4 times 3x minus 5. And so to get rid of the parentheses, I'm going to use a distributive property. So that was one of the previous lessons that we talked about, using distributive property. So every term inside this parentheses, you're going to multiply by 4. All right. So then the step you got to show. So remember that you got to show these steps as presented for the test and the worksheets. So you can say 4 times 3x is 12x, and then 4 times a negative 5 is a negative 20, and that's equal to negative 8. All right. So to go from here to here, or to get to this point here, to get to this equation, I use a distributive property. All right, so that's what I did. All right, now remember, those equations are equivalent. So every time we rewrite this equation, every time we do something, those are equivalent equations. So remember, equivalent equations are equations that have the same solution. So we're getting to the point to where we're going to get x by itself. All right, now notice I have the variable on one side, and that's the only side I have the variable on, but I have constants on the other side. So that's where you're going to start using, and I could not combine like terms. There aren't any like terms. So then I'm going to go to step 3. So that's where I'm going to start using the addition property of equality. So the coefficient of x is 12. You're going to get rid of that 12 last. So that's where the multiplication property of equality comes in. So you're going to deal with that last. What you want to do first, or in this particular step, is get rid of that negative 20. So right now I'm subtracting 20. The opposite of subtracting 20 is to add 20. But remember, according to the addition property of equality, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So notice how this looks. You got to say plus 20, plus 20. And notice I'm aligning my like terms. I'm aligning my like terms. I'm aligning the constants because the next step is to combine like terms. All right, so what property allows me to say this right here, plus 20, is the addition property of equality. All right, now again, once I use addition property of equality, then that's where you can combine like terms. So a negative 20 and a positive 20 is 0. 12x and 0 is 12x, equal a negative 8 and a positive 20 is 12. All right, so I get 12x equal 12. All right, again, what allowed me to get to this point right here, and all these equations right here are equivalent. All right, so what allowed me to get to that point is the is to combine like terms. So that's what I did, combine like terms. Okay, now to get the variable by itself, and you got to show this, although you can see that 12 times 1 is 12, you have to show that step. Okay, so we're in this lesson beginning process where you are needed to show all the steps. Now, in college algebra, you'll be able to skip steps here and there, but in this course, you have to show the steps. So I want to obtain the variable x by itself. So right now, I'm multiplying by 12. The opposite of multiplying by 12 is to divide by 12, but what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Okay, so what allowed me to divide by 12 is the multiplication property of equality. All right, now, once I use the multiplication property of equality, that's where I need to start simplifying. So what I mean by that is 12 divided by 12 is 1. 1 times x is x. And 12 divided by 12 is 1. So there's your solution. So this right here is your solution. Okay, and again, what allowed me to go from here to here is I simplified. All right, so that's number 1. So notice what you got to show. You have to show these steps. All right, so if you want to get all your points, you've got to show all these steps. Okay, number 2. All right, suppose we had negative 3 times 2x plus 3 plus 5 equal negative 2 plus 7. All right, so again, the first thing you want to do, since I do have parentheses, is to use distributive property. Now again, do one thing at a time. So I'm going to use distributive property. So I'm going to say negative 3 times 2x is a negative 6x, and negative 3 times a positive 3 is a negative 9, and then plus 5 equal negative 2 plus 7. All right, so all I did here was just use the distributive property and wrote everything else over. All right, so it allowed me to go from this equation to this equivalent equation is distributive property. So that's what I used. All right. And so now, remember, once I use distributive property, the next thing you want to do is, well, can I combine like terms? Okay, so on the left side you can, because these are constants right here. A negative 5 and a negative 9 and a positive 5 is a negative 4. So I get negative 6x minus 4 equal, and I can combine like terms here. So negative 2 plus 7, those are constants. Negative 2 plus 7 is 5. Okay, so now I have the variable on one side, but constants on the other. So remember, always see this coefficient negative 6? Always use the multiplication property last. Okay, so let's get rid of this, subtract 4. So the opposite of subtracting 4 is to add 4. So that's the only way you can get that to be a 0 when you combine like terms. So you got to add 4 to both sides. So that's how it looks. So you got to say plus 4 plus 4. All right, again, what I'm using here is the addition property of equality. All right, and then I didn't write it down, but when I went from here to here to get to this point here, I combined like terms. Okay, so now once you use the addition property of equality, remember whenever you use the addition property of equality, you're going to combine like terms. So when I combine like terms, negative 4 and a positive 4 is 0, so you're left with negative 6x equal, and then 5 plus 4 is 9. So I got that equivalent equation. Those are all equivalent equations. So the solutions here is the same as the solution here, is the same as the solution here, is the same as the solution here. So I'm combining like terms. Okay, and so now I am to the point where I can get x by itself. Well, right now I'm multiplying by negative 6. So I have to divide both sides by negative 6. And again, I'm going to use the multiplication property of equality. I'm going to divide both sides by negative 6. So what allowed me to do that is the multiplication property of equality. Okay, and then once I divide both sides by negative 6, then I'm going to simplify. All right, so negative 6 divided by negative 6 is 1. 1 times x is x. And then a positive 9 divided by negative 6 is a negative 9/6, which reduced is negative 3/2. All right, so make sure, again, you're simplifying. All right, so simplified here. So I reduced, simplify, reduce. So they're both divisible by 3, so I get negative 3/2. All right, number 3. suppose you had 6 plus 4x, that's a 4x, minus 2 minus x equal 5x minus 2. Okay, so I don't have parentheses here, so I'm not going to use the distributive property, but the second step, remember the second step, is to combine like terms if necessary, and I can here. So on the left-hand side, if you look at this, and let's deal with the variables first, 4x minus x is 3x. And then my constants, a positive 6 and a negative 2 is a positive 4. And that's going to equal 5x minus 2. So those are this left side was the only side I can combine like terms with. Okay, now notice I have variables on both sides, constants on both sides. So let's go ahead and deal with the variables first. It does not matter which side you bring the variables on. You can bring them to the left side or you can bring them to the right side. For our purposes, let's just bring them to the left side. So in other words, you want to get rid of this 5x. Now, adding 5x is not going to help me. Although if I add 5x to both sides, mathematically, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not going to help me to get this term away from this side. So I got to do the opposite. So the opposite of adding 5x is to subtract 5x. So it looks like this. Okay, so remember, to get from here to here, I combine like terms. And then the next thing I'm going to do is use the addition property of equality. Again, once I use the addition property of equality, the next step is to combine like terms. All right, so here we go. This is what it looks like. A positive 3x and a negative 5x is a negative 2x plus 4 equal 5x minus 5x is 0. I'm left with negative 2. All right, so notice I have now the variable term on one side, constant on the other, so I get rid of this plus 4. Always deal with the coefficient last. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. And remember here I'm using the addition property of equality. And then go from here, see where I added, I used the addition property of equality, so I subtracted 5x from both sides to get to that equivalent equation. I combine like terms. Okay, so now remember I'm subtracting 4 from both sides. So once you use the addition property of equality, so I use it here, and the next step is combine like terms. I'm doing it again. The next step is combine like terms. So combine like terms. And so 4 and a negative 4 is 0. Negative 2x plus 0 is negative 2x equal, and a negative 4 and a negative 2 is a negative 6. So that's where I'm at. And now I can get the variable x by itself. So right now I'm multiplying by negative 2. Let me go ahead and rewrite this. So I'm multiplying by negative 2. The opposite is divide by negative 2. And again, I'm using the multiplication property of equality. All right. Now once I use the multiplication property of equality, the next step is to simplify to get x by itself. So in other words, negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1. 1 times x is x. And negative 6 divided by negative 2 is a positive 3. So there's your solution. And again, to go from here to here, I simplified. All right, number 4. So number 4, suppose we had this. Suppose we had 5 times x minus 3 minus 3 times 2x plus 3 equal 6x minus 5. All right, so I have this linear equation, and I do have set of parentheses. In fact, I have 2. So I'm going to use distributive property twice. So I'm going to distribute the 5 here, and over here I'm going to distribute the negative 3. So I'm distributing the negative 3 through here. And so my next equivalent equation then will be 5x minus 15. 5 times negative 3 is a negative 15. And over here I'm going to distribute the negative 3. So negative 3 times 2x is negative 6x. Negative 3 times a positive 3 is a negative 9 equal 6x minus 5. All right, now, so I use a distributive property. All right, now notice I can combine like terms here. So 5x and a negative 6x is a negative x. A negative 15 and a negative 9 is a negative 24. Equal 6x minus 5. Now notice I got to that equation, to this equivalent equation, by combining like terms. Okay. Now notice I have variables on both sides, constants on the other. Let's go ahead and, for our purposes, bring the variables to the right-hand side. So remember, in one of the equations, we brought the variable, see right here? We brought the variable to the left. So this time, let's bring the variable to the right, because it'll just show you that it really does not matter which side you bring the variables on or which side you bring the constants on. So see how this is a negative x? Adding x is going to make that a 0, and that's what you want. So keep in mind that you want this to be a 0. You want that sum to be 0. But what I do to one side, I have to do the other. So if I add x here, I have to add x here. All right, so that's the addition property of equality. Okay, once I do the addition property of equality, that's where you're going to combine like terms. Okay, so 0, negative x plus x is 0, and a negative 24 is a negative 24. Okay, so you got to notice that that's a negative 24. 6x plus x is 7x, and then minus 5. So that's where I'm at. Okay, so now notice I have the variable on one side, constants on both sides, so let's get rid of that subtract 4. So always get rid of the coefficient last. I'm going to divide both sides by 7 last. Okay, so I'm subtracting 5. The opposite of subtracting 5 is to add 5. So that's what it looks like. So that's the addition property of equality. All right, so notice I'm using addition property of equality, combine like terms. I'm doing it again, and then combine like terms again. Okay, now once I combine like terms, a negative 24 and a positive 5 is a negative 19, equal negative 5 and a positive 5 is 0. I'm left with 7x. All right, so I combine like terms, so that's how I get to this point. All right, and now to get x by itself, we're now multiplying by 7. The opposite is divide by 7. So I'm just going to rewrite this over. All right, so that's where I'm going to use the multiplication property of equality. So I'm going to divide both sides by 7. So that's multiplication property of equality. Okay, now once I divide both sides by 7, the next step is to simplify. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 1 times x is x, equal, and then I cannot simplify this, so just leave it as an improper fraction, so negative 19/7. So to get to that point, I simplified. All right, so there's your answer. Okay, number 5. All right, number 5, let's suppose we had this. Suppose we had 8x minus 3 equals 6x plus 7. All right, x minus 3 equals 6x plus 7. All right, I don't have any parentheses, so I'm not going to use the distributive property. I cannot combine like terms on each side. All right, but do notice I have variables on both sides, constant on the other, so let's get rid of the variables first. Let's bring the variables to one side first. All right, so that's where the addition property of equality comes in. All right, so let's bring the variables to the left. So see where this is a positive 6x, subtracting 6x is going to help me. Not adding 6x, because 6x plus 6x is 12x. But subtracting is going to help because I want this to be a 0. So these have to be opposite. So the positive 6x, this has to be a negative 6x. So you're subtracting 6x. All right, so what allowed me to do that was the addition property of equality. What allowed me to subtract 6x from both sides. Now I'm going to combine like terms. Remember, once you do the addition property of equality, the next step is to combine like terms. So 8x minus 6x is 2x minus 3 equal 6x minus 6x is 0. 0 plus 7 is 7. All right, so now the next step, notice I got the variable in this equation, this equivalent equation. The variable term is only on one side. Now I have the constants on both sides, so you got to bring them to the same side now. So right now I'm subtracting 3. The opposite is to add 3. So that's the addition property of equality. So see, I did it once here, combine like terms, I'm doing it again. Okay, now once I do the addition property of equality, the next step is to combine like terms. So negative 3 plus 3 is 0, 2x and 0 is 2x, equal 7 plus 3 is 10. So that was combine like terms. All right, now, although you can tell me that 2 times 5 is 10, so your solution is 5, you have to show that you're using multiplication property of equality. And you do that by, well, to get the variable x by itself, you can divide both sides by 2. So that's how you do that. So you got to show this. So if you want all your points, you have to show these steps. So that's multiplication property of equality. And so once you do the multiplication property of equality, the next step is to simplify. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, 1 times x is x, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. All right, so there's your solution. And to get from here to here, I simplified. All right, number 6. In number 6, suppose we had negative 5 plus x equal negative 4 times 3x minus 1. All right, so negative 5 plus x equal negative 4 times 3x minus 1. All right, so notice I do have a set of parentheses. I'm going to use distributive property. So I'm going to distribute the negative 4 here. So we got negative 5 plus x equal negative 4 times 3x is negative 12x. Negative 4 times a negative 1 is a positive 4. All right, so that was distributive property. Okay. Now, notice I cannot combine like terms because these terms are not alike and these terms are not alike. But I do have variables on both sides and constants on both sides. So let's go ahead and bring the variables to the left, to the right-hand side. Let's do it to the right this time. So right now I'm adding x, the opposite is subtract x. And notice I'm lining my like terms because at this point, once you do the addition property of equality, so I'm subtracting x from both sides. Once I do the addition property of equality, the next step is to combine like terms. So that's why I'm aligning the like terms, so that way I can combine them. Positive x and negative x is 0. Negative 5 plus 0 is negative 5. A negative 12x and a negative x is a negative 13x, and then plus 4. Okay, so now I have the variable term on one side, but I do have constants on the other, so let's get rid of that plus 4. The opposite of adding 4 is to subtract 4. All right, so again, what allows me to subtract 4 from both sides is the addition property of equality. And each time I do the addition property of equality, the next step was to combine like terms. So the next step is combine like terms. All right, so in other words, negative 5 and a negative 4 is a negative 9. A positive 4 and a negative 4 is 0, and you're left with negative 13x. All right, now once you have the variable term on one side and once you have the constant on the other side, the next step is to use the multiplication property of equality. So right now I'm multiplying by negative 13. The opposite is to divide by negative 13. Divide both sides. Again, what allowed me to do that was the multiplication property of equality. All right, now once I do the multiplication property of equality, the next step is to simplify. So negative 13 divided by negative 13 is 1. 1 times x is x, equal, and I got to remember, a negative divided by negative is a positive, so don't say negative 9 over negative 13. You got to remember that a negative divided by negative is a positive, so you have to tell me that my solution is a positive 9/13. That's your solution. You got to say that. All right, and so what allowed me to go from using the multiplication property of equality to the solution is to simplify. All right, number 7. All right, so let's do number 7. Okay, so number 7, suppose we had this for number 7. All right, suppose we had 9/7 x minus 5/8 equal a negative 5/7 x plus 3/4. Okay, so you're going to learn in another section that when you have fractions, you're going to clear the fractions. You're going to clear the denominators. So in other words, you're going to multiply both sides by the LCD. But that's going to be in the next section. We're not going to do that here only because see the variable terms, the denominator, the coefficient, the denominators are the same. 7, 7. All right. So we're going to just continue using the process we're doing here. So I don't have any parentheses, so I'm not going to use distributive property. I cannot combine like terms on each side, so now I'm going to go to the addition property of equality. So I have variables both sides, constants on both sides. So let's deal with the variables first. Let's go ahead and bring the variables to the right-hand side, the left-hand side, excuse me. So see how this is a negative 5/7? So I'm going to go ahead and add a positive 5/7 to both sides. And notice I'm aligning my like terms. So what I want you to notice, though, is this. 9/7 plus 5/7, since the numbers are the same, I can add the numerators. 9 plus 5 is 14, and 14/7 is 2. Okay? So that means this. 9/7 plus 5/7 is 14/7, which is 2x. So 9/7 plus 5/7 is 2x. And then minus 5/8 equal, combine like terms, that's 0. 0 and 3/4 is 3/4. Okay? All right, so again, this part here, I use the addition property of equality. All right, and to get to this equivalent equation from here to here, I just combine like terms. Okay, so now I want to get the variable, I want to get the term 2x by itself. So that means I got to get rid of this subtract 5/8. So the opposite of subtracting 5/8 is to add 5/8. I'm adding 5/8 to both sides. And so negative, and then, so remember that's the addition property of equality. Okay, now once you do the addition property of equality, remember the next step is to combine like terms. So negative 5/8 plus 5/8 is 0, and then use your calculator on this part. So 3/4 plus 5/8. So just say 3 divided by 4, 3 divided by 4 plus 5 divided by 8 equal, and then just convert that back to a fraction, so second PRB equal, and you get 1 and 3/8. All right, so notice that what we just found was this, that 3/4 plus 5/8 equals 1 and 3/8. So that's a mixed number. So you have to convert this mixed number back to an improper fraction. Now, technically, you can leave it as 1 and 3/8, but we prefer that you rewrite it, or you leave it as an improper fraction. So 8 times 1 is 8, and 8 plus 3 is 11. So this is 11/8. So that's what you want to write here. So you get 2x equal 11/8. Okay. Now, notice the reason why you want to leave it as, you want to rewrite it as a fraction is because it is easier. See how you get x by itself? So you divide both sides by 2. It is easier to divide an improper fraction by 2 than it is to divide a mixed number by 2. So if you divide this mixed number by 2, you're still going to have to change it to an improper fraction. All right, so go ahead and leave it, rewrite it back as a fraction. Okay, so now here's the idea. So we have 2x equal 11/8. All right, and again, what allowed me to go from here to here is to combine like terms. Okay, all right, so now I'm going to just go ahead and rewrite this over. Okay, so remember, to get the variable x by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 2, just like this. All right, so that's the multiplication property of equality. All right, and now I'm going to simplify. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and let's just go ahead and think about this right here. So remember in the previous course, this says 11/8 divided by 2. So you got to change this multiplication. So 11/8 times the reciprocal of 2, and the reciprocal of 2 is 1/2. And so I cannot reduce, so the answer is going to be 11/16. Okay, 11 over 16, 11 divided by 16. So I get x equals 11 divided by 16. All right, and so again, what allowed me to go from the multiplication property of equality to 11/16 is to simplify. All right. So remember, when you divide fractions, you got to take the fraction that's in the numerator, 11/8, and then change the division to multiplication. So in other words, you're going to multiply by the reciprocal of the fraction that's in the denominator. So the fraction that's in the denominator is 2 over 1, 2, which is 2 over 1. The reciprocal is 1/2. And then you just multiply and then reduce if you can, and there's your answer. All right, number 8. Let's do one more. So this will be number 8. Okay, number 8, you have 8 minus, in parentheses, 2x minus 5 equal negative 2x plus 5. All right, suppose we have that. Okay, so what you got to recognize, see, I do have parentheses, so I'm going to end up using distributive property. And the question is, well, what do I distribute? Well, there's no number right here. It understands to be a 1. So what you may want to do is rewrite this like this now. Just like this. So rewrite this as a 1. Just like this. Okay, now I'm going to distribute the negative 1. Now be careful, don't say 8 minus 1 is 7 and distribute the 7. That's incorrect. Because remember the order of operations. See the order of operations, see how this is multiplication? The order of operations says I multiply before I subtract. Okay? So you have to distribute first. All right, so this becomes, so negative 1 times 2x. So I'll get 8, just rewrite the 8 over. Negative 1 times 2x is a negative 2x. A negative 1 times a negative 5 is a positive 5, equal negative 2x plus 5. And so again, what allowed me to do that was the distributive property. Distributive property. Okay, now I'm going to combine like terms, because 8 and 5 is 13. So I get negative 2x plus 13 equal, and then there's nothing to combine here, so I'm just going to rewrite it. Okay. Now, let me go ahead and change this because it's not going to come out to what I wanted. So let's change this to negative 3x right here. Just change negative 3x. And the reason is because if I add 2x to both sides, see if I get rid of the variables. If I add 2x to both sides, the variables go away. We haven't talked about that yet, so that's going to be in another section. So I don't want to talk about what happens in the solving process when the variables go away. The term just disappears. Okay, so go ahead and change that to negative 3x for me. Okay, so that's where we're at now. So negative 3x plus 5, negative 3x plus 5, negative 3x plus 5, negative 3x plus 5. Okay, so now I have variables on both sides, constants on the other. Okay? All right, and by the way, what allowed me to go from the distributive property to this one was combine like terms. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring the variables to the left. So I'm going to add 3x to both sides, just like this. Add 3x to both sides. So that's the addition property of equality. Okay, now once you do the addition property of equality, remember you're going to combine like terms again. So negative 2x and a positive 3x is a positive x. So x plus 13 equal negative 3x and a positive 3x is 0. 0 plus 5 is 5. So that was combined like terms. All right, now I'm going to get x by itself. So I'm going to just subtract 13 from both sides because the opposite of adding 13 is to subtract 13. So again, that's the addition property of equality. And again, once you do the addition property of equality, you can combine like terms. Combine like terms. So in other words, a positive 13, negative 13 is 0. X plus 0 is x equal. 5 and a negative 13 is a negative 8. All right, and then again, to go from addition property of equality to this step is combine like terms. Now I want you to notice something though. at this point, I don't have to, I'm not going to use the multiplication property of equality because the variable x is already by itself. See, there's no coefficient other than 1. I mean, there's a coefficient, it's 1, but it's no other number. So I don't have to divide both sides by this 1 because it's already x. It's already a 1x. So there's your solution. You're done. Okay, so that's going to take care of this lesson on solving linear equations.